Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Louis Metzger, and I have the distinct pleasure today to interview Dr. Ella Lee about her perspectives on biotech in the post-COVID-19 world. And Dr. Lee, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I was wondering if you could just give us a brief introduction about yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Metzger. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ella Lee, and I'm the CEO of ZGC Capital and a partner of our US fund in charge of ZGC's investment and incubator operation. A little bit a quick introduction of our company. Our parent company is located in Beijing that manages Z Park, the largest tech hub in China. It has helped the growth of 82 unicorn companies in China and has participated in 148 funds with a total valuation of over 21 billion US dollars. Our US firm, ZGC Capital, is the US subsidiary company founded in 2014. We now have 2 US innovation centers, and one is where we are located in Silicon Valley. For those who joined the event earlier, probably watched the video already of our Silicon Valley Innovation Center, which is a 3 floors building with around 80,000 square feet area. Investment is the other important business in addition to incubator. We have a quite a comprehensive fund system, including fund and several VC funds that target at portfolios from seed to B round stage. Starting from this year, we are expanding into healthcare innovation sector, and MedLabs is CGC's first healthcare focused accelerator program run together with our founding partner GHIN. We are actually now still taking application from health startups. So please check our website if you're interested. Myself is a PhD trained scientist turned venture capitalist, and I have more than 10 years experience in biotech research, and I have special interest in therapeutic investment opportunities from drug discovery to commercialization stage. And also I look at the deals from digital health, medical device, and AI sectors.
Oh, thank you for that introduction. And this is an exciting time to be in this space. And you have, clearly have a strong and long background in biotech. And can you tell us a little bit about how you define biotech and how is it related to health tech in your view?
Yeah, sure. So biotech, as you can tell from names, biotech is a technology based on biology. It uses a living organism such as cells, organelles, animals, or humans to make product. It also often overlaps with other technologies such as molecular biology, bioengineering, could be also genetic engineering, especially in the field of pharmaceutical sector. In addition to medicine, biotech can also be applied in other fields such as agriculture, clean energy, food production, and also genomics as what we are quite familiar with. And this is how we define biotech. Health tech, which is also called digital health, is different. It's a broad sector with the quite common applications, including wearable devices, AI, personalized medicine, and telemedicine, which emerges greatly during COVID-19. Meanwhile, it's also making the digital health is also making revolution in biotech sector by offering new tools for drug and diagnostic development. It also expands into healthcare delivery, such as patient monitoring, disease management, and also point of care diagnostics.
Oh, thank you. That's a very interesting description and helps differentiate those two related areas. One important point for investors and founders to understand is that there are specific lead time and resource, that is monetary needs, required to make viable biotech startups. And how does this differ from other spaces, for instance, such as healthcare tech?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. It's very, very different. So if you compare biotech research to other sectors, biotech takes a much longer time and a tremendous investment to bring a drug to market. Sorry. Of course, most biotech startups choose to exit by selling or licensing their asset to big pharmaceutical companies before it gets FDA approval. But when a company decide to bring a new drug to market, the average cost can range from $300 million to up to $2 billion. And if your drug if you're lucky enough to enter clinical phase, you would need hundreds of $1 million to cover the cost for each phase or milestone. And the time process to develop a product or a drug is also very long. It includes 2 to 3 years in drug discovery, around 1 year or so for preclinical work, and then you enter clinical phase. Clinical phase will be separated into phase 1 that would usually take 1 to 2 years, and another 1 to 2 years for phase 2, and another around 2 to 5 years or even more for phase 3. And now here we're not even mentioning, we're talking about the high failure rate in each phase. So because of all this high cost, this lengthy research time, and also high failure rate, many startups choose to nowadays exit at early stages. But there are also many biotech companies, instead of doing all the R&D themselves, they choose to acquire certain pipeline or asset by exclusive licensing or partnering to minimize the risk before going public. And many such companies, they are nowadays choosing to go public, listing in Hong Kong Stock Exchange, which has a much friendly policy for pre-revenue biotech companies.
Thank you. That's a very important perspective, especially when it comes to investors doing proper due diligence and having realistic understanding of the timelines in this space, which, as you note, are quite different from many other areas. Changing gears a little bit, I was curious how you think that healthcare innovation in the U.S. has helped the world during the COVID-19 pandemic specifically.
Yeah, so actually, when you look at some numbers since the starting of the pandemic last year, around $80 billion has been spent in COVID-19 research in United States. And as a reward, of course, the cutting edge technologies have been developed at a lightning speed, especially in the development of vaccine and antiviral drugs. Scientists have committed a timeline that would sound like a fantasies 1 year ago. For instance, in the past, the average timeline for vaccine development and approval was like 5 years, and the record was like 4 years, 1 year shorter. But now, the pandemic has a timeline amazingly to less than 1 year. And if you look at the reason, hefty funding and global collaboration are the two big contributors. For instance, by working together with partners from other parts of the world, scientists now are able to identify new virus samples in different patient population, able to, for instance, determine new locations in the global range, and also to co-develop diagnostic tests for virus detection and also other novel therapeutic methods. In addition to that, application of AI, artificial intelligence, is also really the key in a drug development process, especially in the drug target identification and validation. Also plays an important role in clinical data processing. For instance, by using AI, we can screen a virtual compound library now that is composed of billions of molecules. And we can also identify preclinical candidates in a much shorter time. And tons of biomedical, clinical, and patient data from, let's say, EMR, one-next sequencing, or other resources can be all now transformed into computational models in no time. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. So the the emerging of new technologies, such as gene editing and cell therapy, also accelerate the drug development process and help find a solution to the COVID-19 crisis. So this is definitely, you would say, a pandemic is really a key driver to push the technology developing, which in return also becomes a solution for this COVID-19.
That's that's really showing that there's a silver lining to the pandemic. I mean, it would be best if it hadn't happened, but in a way, it's driving, as you point out, change in the biotech startup ecosystem. And in particular, I was wondering if I could follow up with a question about how you think COVID-19 has affected the tech startup funding situation.
Yeah, so it's not hard to imagine the whole global startup ecosystem has been severely impacted by the pandemic. And let's just look at each individual number. Last year, since the start of a crisis, VC sector, VC funding dropped like 20% immediately worldwide, and 75% of startup experience the significant or severe revenue fall. And among those startups, 40% of the company actually experienced a really bad drop, up to 50% of the drop in revenue. In travel sectors, those startups are worst impacted, with almost 70% of fall in revenue. But despite of all this loss, the pandemic or the crisis also created opportunities in both short-term and also long-term runs. For instance, there were still like 12% of startup reported significant growth last year. Those can survive or even benefit from crisis are mostly young companies that can react really fast and have more flexibility. And the type of the company that are most seen in the sectors are in the sectors such as healthcare service, home delivery, remote working, online education, and other pandemic related sectors.
And as a follow-up to that, how do you see COVID-19 affected the deal flow and investment in biotech sectors? And as the pandemic continues in one form or another, throughout the world, but also hopefully ends in some places or winds down, what do you predict for the future of biotech funding post-pandemic?
Yeah, so in healthcare industry, since March last year, most of the clinical trial sites have already either slowed or completely stopped for its operation, struggling to deal with pandemic. And according to one estimate, around 1,100 clinical trials have slowed or stopped in US and also Europe. Only in this one quarter, the second quarter of last year, right after pandemic started. But despite of all this operational disruption, pandemic also creates a lot of opportunities in healthcare industry. Unlike other industry that faces huge challenges of fundraising, healthcare industry was seeing a record high in capital raised last year. For instance, in Biotech industry, VC investment was increased by 45 last year. with a global total to almost $37 billion. And also, meanwhile, well, 1/3 of those investment money went to oncology and cell therapy applications. More than 10% of the venture investment went to the area of infectious disease. So even though clinical trial were slowed down, but pandemic has also caused the high demand of new drug to be developed. Just looking at, for instance, last year, about 1/4 of new grants was given to therapeutic and also vaccine research targeting at COVID-19. Another change was VC has been also doubling down on their investment and commit more capital to existing project. But moving forward, we could expect there will be more M&As in biotech sectors, but also few companies you would expect will also disappear. New biotech startup will continue to raise capital, and mature healthcare and biotech companies will also continue to go public, but are likely in a slower pace. And the valuation, if you look at that, the valuation of public biotech companies were affected badly by stock market disruption right after the pandemic started last year. But it's also predicted to go back to where it were or above the level before the pandemic in future.
Thanks. And a very brief follow-up to that. Where do you see sustained funding for infectious disease startups or infectious disease related startups in this post-pandemic world?
So that would be something we expect very likely to happen. The short answer is yes.
Yeah, so that's good to know, because before the pandemic, it was really rather difficult to raise money for infectious disease research, both in academia and industry. And so this may have stimulated reassessing the value of that. So moving on, this is a global crisis, COVID-19, but it's also happened in a globalized world. And what are some of the biotech opportunities in other parts of the world versus the US?
Yeah. So if you're looking at the like from a global perspective, despite of all this disruption in the country, U.S. though still the big player in healthcare industry, receiving 1/3 of the funding from last year and also this year worldwide, and in United States, California, and also Massachusetts are still the top 2 largest hubs for biotech innovation, receiving around 60% of funding from the country. And if you look at the Asia Pacific region, China is not far behind and leads on biotech investment compared to other Asian countries. Before the pandemic, many cities in China, including Hangzhou, Beijing, and Guangzhou, the big cities, they were hotspots for biotech investment outside the United States. And despite of the pandemic related setback, there were still almost $3 million biotech investment $3 million biotech investment in China last year. And since, as I mentioned earlier, Hong Kong Stock Exchange sets its listing rules to welcome pre-revenue biotech company in 2018, more and more biotech company now choose to go public in Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Now it's already become the second most thriving market for public listing of biotech company globally. And also, meanwhile, starting from second quarter of last year, Europe has already surpassed China, becoming a new hotspot for biotech investment. More than 3 billion biotech deals were completed in Europe last year, up almost 40% from the year before pandemic. And if you're looking at the important biotech hub cities in Europe, the newest stats show the cities, including Stockholm, Sweden, Paris, Cambridge, London, and Berlin now becoming a more important biotech hub for innovation and also funding. Lastly, in North America, Toronto is also an important site for biotech innovation. It has an excellent biotech ecosystem with great funding support from both federal and also local governments. They also have biotech incubator and accelerator program, which creates a great environment for biotech research.
So to wrap up the interview, I was wondering what your thoughts are on future trends in healthcare post-pandemic, and specifically, what are the revolutionary technologies that have come or are coming, and what sort of trends do you see in the biotech ecosystem, such as more collaboration internationally and between companies generally?
Sure. So there are many great technologies revolutionizing healthcare industry. Earlier on, we discussed the application of AI in drug development in healthcare or biotech industry. But there are also many other great emerging technologies that are being used as a great tool. Examples are gene editing and cell therapy that can accelerate the drug development process, and also the rapid adoption of, for instance, microfluidics, such as organ on the chip or lab on the chip technologies. Other technologies are also rising rapidly as well, such as biosensor or like a 3D bioprinting technologies. Another example right now, everybody heard of it, is DNA and RNA vaccines. We all know mRNA vaccine developed by Moderna and Pfizer. So they become a more dominant because their high scalability and protective power compared to the protein vaccines. In addition to the technologies, collaboration will also become more important. Here, we're not only talking about a collaboration from geography perspective, for instance, subjects recruitment from global sites in global clinical trial, but also collaboration between biotech and other parties, such as experts of medical imaging and also data processing. And another impact is on investment patterns. In the past, investors are very reluctant to invest in companies that are not from local. Now investors are realizing they can still build a relationship with a startup that are far away. And this is definitely a really good thing. Startup will have more access for the funding opportunities, and the VC will also have more diverse deal sourcing opportunity in the global range. And also believe those investment pattern will continue even in post-pandemic times.
Thank you for your really interesting answers to the previous questions. And to finish up, I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about the MedLabs Accelerator that you're running. And can you tell us more about your program and what about it excites you?
Sure, of course, I'm more than happy to. As I mentioned earlier in the talk, starting from this year, our company are expanding into the healthcare innovation space, and MedLabs is our first healthcare focused accelerator program run together with our founding partner, GHIN. MedLabs is a 3-month long program, and the first cohort will start in the last week of June. We are mainly targeting at startup companies from seed to pre-A round. And in this cohort, we are taking companies from sectors including biotech, digital health, and medical device. Eventually, we will choose around 80 companies in the cohort. And our fund partner, GHIN, will grant 100K investment to one of the 8 portfolios by the end of the 3-month program. The partnership between ZGC and the GHIN make this accelerator very unique and also standing out. For those who are interested to explore Chinese market, we have a 2 weeks program themed under Link to China. We will not only include workshops and one-on-one meeting focusing on patent protection and how to commercialize in China. We will also provide opportunities to offer a 10 days long business trip in China, and we will cover all the expense for the portfolios. Meanwhile, we also have a huge clinical network. Right now, we have almost 60 physician entrepreneurs, in addition to the mentors from commercial track, signing up as a mentor for the program. And our workshop will also have a big focus in clinical resources. We are now still taking application from this cohort. So again, if you are a dedicated team and looking to accelerate your business, please feel free to contact us.
Dr. Lee, that was a really great fireside chat, and most appreciated your insights, and also for introducing us to the MedLabs Accelerator. It's going to be an exciting summer ahead, and it will be fantastic to see the development of the portfolio companies that are selected. And so I very much appreciate the chance to speak with you, and wanted to ask if you had any final thoughts.
Yeah, no, I think today we have also the chance to cover many topics. We have a big focus in biotech sector, but I also touch on the digital health, which also play also important role to the drug development, especially during pandemic, providing a greater solution for the COVID-19. And this is a really a great timing. And again, if you are the startup in the space and also want to get a great help, support from us, you can just apply to our accelerator program.
Great. Well, thanks again, Dr. Lee, and have a great day. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Metzger.